An atheist can be more religious or more spiritual than a so-called religious person. I was recently reading a book by a world-famous author, and the book was going along well when the author made a comment like, "Atheists are denying God, so they are denying existence itself, and that they are completely lost, etc., etc." While it is true that denying God is denying existence, the fact is that many of the so-called religious people also deny God. And I'll explain why in a second. I shut down that book and didn't read it anymore because, based on my own experience, there was a whole long time period, almost 7 or 8 years, when I was a hardcore atheist. I didn't believe in God, in spirit, in prana, in chi, in angels, in otherworldly aliens, whatever you want to call it. And yet, those 7 or 8 years were the most spiritually productive of my life. Because even though I didn't believe in organized religion or an officially sanctioned version of God, I was still looking for the truth. Looking in psychology books, looking in best-selling self-help books, looking in atheist versions of Buddhism, looking in pure forms of meditation like Vipassana, which do not require any religious belief. I looked and I looked and I looked. I also tried to find happiness in the material world by trying to start my own business part-time and not making much money. All these things, all these failures led me to realize that I was looking at the wrong place. And when I was ready, I had a most spectacular a few of them spiritual experiences, which showed me the truth of reality. But the fact is, if I hadn't spent 7 or 8 years walking in the desert of materialism, I would not have realized or accepted how valuable my spiritual gifts were. And the spiritual experiences I had happened purely by grace, by the grace of, call it God, divinity, consciousness. I didn't do any special meditation. I didn't do any top secret Kundalini yoga exercises. I did not achieve nirvana or anything. Everything that happened to me happened by God's grace. And these experiences, they did not last 24 hours a day and did not last every single day. But they were strong enough to make me realize that I was part of something bigger. They were permanent, they weren't temporary experiences, in that my life was changed forever. But I still have to do the work. Because like I said, I got these experiences from God's grace, and now I have to reach the same stage myself. And that is a part of spiritual progress. The point I'm trying to make is, in most stories of prophets, think like Moses, they spent years wandering in the desert. And that is a good metaphor for our own experience, in which we have to spend years stuck in the desert of materialism, looking for spiritual nourishment where only sand exists. And this wandering is necessary, it is not optional. Which comes back to the attacks that many so-called spiritual people make on atheists. And I'm not talking about religious fanatics, I'm talking about teachers of yoga, Buddhism, so-called New Age teachers. Even they attack atheists and agnostics. But here is the thing. An atheist might be more religious than many religious people. Because the God that many religious people worship is a figment of their own imagination. It is not a real God. It is an idol, to use a term in the course of miracles. An idol here doesn't mean a stone statue. It means a mental image of what you think God is, based on your upbringing, your culture, your religion, what your parents/elders taught you. So if you grew up in a Western type environment, you might believe God is a tall, white-haired man who lives in the sky. If you grew up in India, you might believe God is a multi-armed, blue-skinned man or woman who lives in the sky, and so on and so forth. But here is the thing. These are just mental images. God is not some dude who lives in the sky. God is not some micromanager who punishes you because you broke some silly rule. God is not your boss. God is not your father. And the God many of these religious people pray to, like I said, it's their own mental image of what God should be. In many cases, it has nothing to do with the real God. The God that people worship is a vengeful, angry, hateful, jealous, obsessed with your sexual organs and where you are putting them. Whereas when I had my spiritual experiences, that was not the experience of God or spirit or consciousness. The experience I had was one of spaciousness, one of vastness, one of immense love and peace and joy. It's like the whole ocean standing in front of a one grain of sand. And you look at all the ocean, not one wave, but all the water in the world, in all the seas, if it formed one wall, probably as high as the moon, and you were standing in front of that wall, that is the feeling of God. That's the feeling of touching divinity. And trust me, once you have that experience, you cannot go back. All your doubts vanish. Here is the test I used to see if the experience you had was of the real divinity or just a low-level spiritual experience. Now, spiritual experiences come in many ways, and all are useful. But the fact is, and I'm speaking from experience, 10 years ago, when I was meditating a lot, I had a lot of spiritual experiences. But the fact was, even after all of them, I still had doubt. The recent spiritual experience I had, which was given to me as a grace by God, after that I had no doubts. Zero doubt. I have not become a Buddha. I have not become a Jesus yet. But I know 100% in every single atom of my body that I am something bigger than the body. And this 100% confidence only comes when you catch a glimpse of the real divinity. And the thing is that it's a very simple experience. There are no visions. There are no floating in the air. There is no kundalini rising. None of all this new age stuff that you might have heard about. The real self-realization is a very simple experience. You can have it while sitting in your car or eating food or playing with your children. And once it comes, you can never go back. The experience will never let you go. So what I'm saying next, I'm speaking from my own experience. You may agree or disagree. I don't care. Like I said, that experience has changed me permanently. And I know for a fact that the God many people worship is not the God that I felt and experienced. And that it is better to be an atheist and not believe in anything than to worship a God that your own mind has made up. Because as an atheist, at least you have freedom. You can choose your own thoughts. Well, some freedom. Nobody has complete freedom while we are stuck in this world of form. But at least you are not letting some 2,000-year-old religion drive your daily life. If an atheist were to come to me, someone who thinks God is the most stupid idea in the world, and another person, a most religious person, would come to me, someone who has been praying to God for all his life, or who has been doing yoga for all her life. For me, there is no difference between them. There is no difference between the atheist and the religious person. Because they both, listen carefully, this is important, both of them have a mental idea of how the universe works. The atheist thinks that it is the laws of science that govern the world, while the religious person thinks it is the made-up laws of their made-up religion that govern the world. Even the so-called New Agey types, people who practice yoga, Buddhism, /Vipassana, /Wiccan or whatever, they might act like they are very, I'm against all these traditions, I believe in pure spirit. But the fact is, they're still stuck in the mental model. They have their own mental idea of how the universe works or should work. And they're stuck in that world. So that is why I say there is no difference between the atheist and the religious person or the spiritual person. Both of them are equally wrong. And that's why there is no difference. The atheist might be slightly more spiritual. Sometimes atheist people are spiritual. And sometimes religious people are very good and kind-hearted people. I know it is fashionable to make fun of religious people. I'm talking about traditional religious people. Those who go to church on Sunday, or the temple, Jewish temple on Saturday, or the Hindu temple on Tuesday. I know it is fashionable to make fun of such people. But the fact is, many of these people might be, even though they're stuck in their religion, they might be doing good stuff. I know many religious people who volunteer at homeless people's shelters or spend their personal time helping others. But on the other hand, there are also many atheist people, who might be doing good in the world. They might be doctors treating cancer, or they must still be volunteering at, say, animal shelter or women's shelter. So you cannot say whether an atheist person is good or a religious person is good. They might both be good, they might both be bad. They both might have a big ego. But from a divine point of view, from the point of view of God as I define it, and by God I mean our own real self, our own consciousness, that can only be experienced, not talked about. So I'm talking about God, and you're listening and you're shaking your head. But trust me, until you have experienced God, you know nothing of God. There is no difference between a spiritual person, an atheist person, a religious fanatic like somebody like Al-Qaeda who blows himself or herself up. You might think that you are more spiritual than them, and maybe you're not murdering people. But the fact is, at the end of the day, both of you, the terrorist who blows himself up, and you, whoever you are, you have an equal chance of reaching God, the divine. I know this is shocking for some people, but God does not discriminate. You can be a complete atheist, you can laugh at God. You could be a violent murderer, a rapist. But God's grace falls equally on everyone. And I don't know why some people are chosen and not others. For example, why was I chosen? I suppose I know because I kept looking. But there are other people who have been looking for longer than me, and they haven't found it. While I'm speaking this, my inner teacher tells me that this is not true. And that there's a difference between looking and looking. Looking just to satisfy the ego, and looking because you are like me, you have looked in the material world and not found anything. And you have given up all hope. And you're willing to listen to something bigger than you. But I'm moving off track here. The point is, there is absolutely no difference between an atheist and a religious person when it comes to finding the divine within you. It's a bit shocking, it's a bit sad. But ultimately, all we can do is splash around in the water. And we may sink or we may swim. But to become real masters, we need help from the ocean. We have to realize that we are not separate from the ocean. That there is no need to try to swim because we are the water we are running away from. And this happens more easily when you get grace, divine grace. And like I said, the laws of divine grace are very complex. But they do work. If you show continuous dedication, keep following the path, you will get grace and you will see the truth. Until you have seen the truth, and even after you have seen the truth, you must realize that there is no difference between people, that people's action in this world do not matter. Again, shocking things. People's action in this world do not matter. Whether you're a soldier killing people or a terrorist blowing himself up or a bank robber, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is with what consciousness are you doing your work? Are you doing it to satisfy your own ego? Or are you doing it because you feel yourself some part of something bigger? Ultimately, if you live in this world, you must serve one of two masters. There is no option, there is no choice 3. There are only two masters you have. One is your ego, which is your identification with the body and the thinking process. Your so-called I. Your second master is the inner teacher, the divine, that lives within you, and which is your real identity. You must choose one of these masters to serve. Serving the ego leads to depression, sadness, feelings of incompletion, even when you are rich or well off. While serving the inner teacher leads to joy and peace, even as you may be very poor and starving in the outer world. Coming back to our original point, what you do in the outer world does not matter. It's the consciousness you do it with that matters. Are you doing it to satisfy your ego? Your own mental idea of what God is? To satisfy your own need for existence, your sense of incompletion and pain? Or are you doing it because there is a higher call? There is an inner voice that tells you to do something. Two people might be doing the same thing. For example, both might be in the army hunting down, say, terrorists in Iraq or someplace. One person will be thinking, these damned Arabs, they're all terrorists, they all need to die. And it is my job to hunt down and kill the last of these bastards. That's one way of thinking. The other person might be thinking, this is a hard job, a painful job, but someone has to do it. And since I am physically strong, since I have trained, or I have been trained so well, it is well that I do my job to protect the innocent people back home or over here. It's the same job, hunting terrorists, but can be done with a different level of consciousness. Let's look at another example. This was a very cliched example I gave you. What about a doctor saving lives? You might think a doctor is always noble, ooh, saving life. But then you might have one doctor who genuinely values life and wants to help people, while the other one is more interested in either becoming more famous, becoming richer, or getting a patent for his technology so he can become a millionaire. There are many doctors who, when they find a treatment, immediately patent it and make a lot of money off it. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with making money. But if you're doing it by holding treatment from poor people or from people who cannot afford your patented medicine, then you are in effect stealing from God. So even with a doctor, you might have those who want to help people, and sometimes they might get frustrated and might hate their job, but overall their goal is to help. While you might also get doctors whose only goal is to enrich themselves, if not by money, then by prestige and fame. Any job can be done by either serving the ego or serving the inner divine. If you have a boring office job, you might just do it just to get it off your back so you can go home at 5 o'clock and get drunk. Or you might decide that every moment is precious and that you will spend every moment doing your work with diligence, even if it is boring. So your actions don't matter. The consciousness that you do them with matters. That's why there is the real no difference between an atheist and a believer, a religious person. Because if you look at it carefully, most atheists and most believers have the same level of consciousness. They are stuck in games of their own mind. They are stuck with a mental idea of what they think God is or God is not. And they are willing to fight, humiliate, attack other people to prove their point of view is right and the other person is wrong. An atheist might be spiritual. A religious person might be spiritual. Or they both might be idiots. It is hard to tell. It is hard to make a general rule. But the point I wanted to make in this talk was that you should not go around saying, like many teachers do, that if you don't believe in God, or if you're a hardcore atheist, or if not God, you refuse to accept some dogma, which might be the dogma of Buddhism, the dogma of yoga, Vedanta, that if you refuse to accept any dogma of any guru or religion or tradition, then you are not perfect. The only thing that matters is that you continue to search for the joy of your life any way you can. And for some people, there will be times like it happened with me, when they will be searching for this joy outside. And that is fine, that is acceptable. Even when you're looking for peace and joy outside, you're still looking inside, because there is no difference between the outer world and the inner world. The only difference that could be said is that searching inside is a quicker way to joy. While if you're looking outside, you might spend years, decades, even lives before you find anything. But that does not mean that people who are stuck in the material world or who are atheists are somehow inferior to us spiritual types. I guess this is what really rubs me off wrong. The thinking that as spiritual people we are somehow better than these materialistic people, these atheists, they don't even believe in anything. These nihilists, we are better than them, we are so spiritual. You are not more spiritual than the other man, your fellow brother or your fellow sister. And the fact that you think so is what holds you back in meditation. You need to accept your fellow brothers and sisters as they are. Some will be very religious, very spiritual, meditating every day. Some will be hardcore atheists. Some will be religious fanatics who will attack you because of your personal choices or sexual choices, or just because you worship a different god from them. And that is fine, because remember, we are all equal. In the spirit, we are all equal. You are not better than your fellow brother or sister. You may be slightly ahead on the road compared to them. But that does not matter, because they can catch up anytime they want. We all get divine grace. And this divine grace can turn the most sinful, the most unspiritual of men into an advanced student at any time. It is not for us to judge our fellow brothers and sisters. It is our job merely to help them as best we can. Most will not accept our help. Some may even attack us, and that's fine. Don't force your help on others. Show them compassion. If somebody is not advanced enough to understand the teachings now, that is fine. One day they will understand. Like Eckhart Tolle has said many times, many of the people who get his first book, The Power of Now, they don't read it, they just put it away. And it's the same thing with the Course in Miracles. People, when the first time they get it, they never read it. 99% of the time they put it away. Until they go through a moment of crisis. And then they discover The Power of Now or A Course in Miracles. And they read it, and they wonder why they didn't read it before. The same thing happened to me. And people wonder why they didn't read this book before, this great book. And the reason is that they were not at a state of consciousness where they could understand the book. Understand not intellectually, but at the level of the heart, the inner level. But when they were ready, the same book which they thought was boring, like I thought Eckhart Tolle's book was really boring. A Course in Miracles I thought was written by some boring professor who had nothing better to do. Which is true in a way, because the scribes, people who scribed the book, they were professors. I don't know if they were boring. They probably were. But when your level of consciousness rises, you suddenly start understanding the teachings. Things that didn't make sense suddenly start making sense. So if you see an atheist or somebody you think is not spiritual enough, show them compassion, because one day they will learn. And if they get grace, they can, make decades or life's worth of progress in a few minutes. That's what happened to me. In a few seconds, I made 30 or 40 years of spiritual progress. Only by divine grace, by nothing else. Not of my own work. Because at that time when I was an atheist, I didn't even meditate. I'd stopped completely. And even then I got grace. Which is why you cannot judge a person. Whatever the level today, it does not matter. When they're ready, when the inner teacher decides they're ready, any one of us can make huge strides in a second. Time, like I said, is an illusion. There is no such thing as time. once you go beyond the mind. Thank you for listening. I hope you will show compassion to both atheists and fanatical religious types, because one day they too will be ready to accept the teaching and walk on the path. But until then, as teachers of light, as A Course in Miracles says, we work on our own self. The teacher of light only heals himself or herself. And if we can heal ourselves, the outer world automatically heals itself. There is no need to fix the world, we just need to fix ourselves. So I hope you find the joy and peace you're looking for in your life. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. If you want a free course on how to contact your inner teacher, your own spiritual guide, the part of the divine who lives inside of you and is guiding your spiritual progress, then please go to my website, thepathtojoy.org. That is thepathtojoy.org. Thank you.